Most people do not need another plan. They need to stop negotiating with the part of their mind that talks them out of doing the thing they already know they need to do. You already know you need to go to the gym. You already know you need to eat more protein. You already know you stay up way too late or drink too much or smoke too much. You already know these things. So this is not an information problem. This is an execution problem. And the thing about execution is it doesn't wait around for the right emotional state to magically appear before taking action. That is not how things work. And I've seen this theme coming up a lot recently in my clients, in my friends, some family members, and even in myself, which is why I want to make this video today. And today I have 5 different concepts we're going to dive into on this theme, beginning with this concept of motivation comes after the action. The biggest thing I've seen and heard people saying lately is, I just don't feel motivated. I'm waiting for this motivation to go to the gym or to go out and do my walks. They think once I feel motivated, then I'll go work out. Once I feel ready, then I'll start. Once I have the clarity, then I can execute. Then I can take the action. But I need to get clarity. I need to get information or research. But that's all backwards. Most of the time, motivation does not come before the action. You're gonna feel more motivated after you take the action. You don't wait for the state to magically appear. You create the state. You create the motivated state by taking action. If you show up at the gym, it doesn't even matter what you do. You just show up, you walk through the doors, and you spend 20 minutes in the gym. After you leave, you are gonna feel so much better. You're gonna feel more motivated, more inspired, and you're gonna feel like you accomplished something. It's less about what actually happened at the gym, what exercises you did. It's more about the fact that you went to the gym, that you took action, and that you showed up. That's where we get the motivation from. That's where we get this confidence of doing the hard things, especially when we don't feel like it. That's what builds the greatest amount of confidence, self-rapport, and the consistency that builds over time. So you create this state. You don't wait for this state to happen. For example, I had a couple days ago, I'd finished working with a couple of clients, got back to my place. I knew I wanted to do interval sprints and I was going to do a outdoor workout, this gym down by this lake. And I get home, started responding to a couple of emails, a couple of messages, and then I ended up on Instagram. And I'm sitting there scrolling through this, knowing damn well that I told myself I was going to go out and do this workout. Still scrolling, told myself 2 or 3 times, all right, dude, like knowing it's a feeling, it's a knowing that this is not what I'm supposed to be doing and that I'm stuck in this trap. And I finally just said, all right, stop. Turned off the phone, got up, walked out the door. And as soon as I got out the door, I start walking, I'm breathing, the sun's out. I felt so much better. And I felt like I had finally cut this cord that was keeping me attached in this loop, in this cycle. And the same goes for you. If you're after a meal, you're sitting around and you know that one of your goals is to do a 30-minute walk after your meals. And you finish your dinner, you sit down and you're scrolling or you're just vegging out on the couch, but you know that you have this goal you committed to going for walks after your meals. The longer that you sit there and not go for a walk, the more negative momentum you build up that makes it harder for you to just snap out of it and just go for the damn walk. If you can catch yourself and just snap out of it, get up, take action, do the thing. Or if you're stuck in thought loops where you can't seem to get yourself out of this loop, whether it is scrolling or whether it's watching TV or just stuck on the couch, laying around, whatever it may be, just get up, go to the bathroom, splash water on your face, go for a walk, go outside, get a glass of water, jump up and down, do something to get yourself out of that loop and break that pattern. Because the more you sit around there not taking action, the harder it is to actually do the thing and to take the action. So many of us get stuck in these loops of overthinking or feeling like we need more information before we take the action. This brings us to concept number 2, where overthinking is self-sabotage in disguise. the smartest people with the most knowledge, the highest education, and the most intellectual have the greatest struggle with this. It's about the analysis and feeling like we need more information before we can take action, that we need clarity, that we need the perfect environment or the perfect plan before taking action. And this is the problem with perfectionism. It turns into this paralysis of analysis, and then the analysis becomes the avoidance. And the analysis can turn into a false sense of productivity. It can feel like you're making progress, like you're doing something, that you're producing, and it turns into self-sabotage. For me, this is one of the things that I have the hardest things with is I always like to have information, but there becomes a point at which information becomes a burden because we don't need more information. And in fact, in this modern world where we're constantly barraged with information, with ads, with Instagram, with TikTok, with YouTubes. All of these things are constantly throwing information in our face. Now with AI, this just drives me absolutely bonkers. When I see some fake ass AI slop, I get so pissed because I wasted my precious attention and energy and absorbed this information and this data when in fact it was just the opposite. It was just fake, made up AI slop. And that is so aggravating for me because we only have so many, what I would call attention units. If you think of your attention as a predefined, predetermined quantity of units that you have in any given day, say 5,000 attention units, and you're giving these attention units away to every piece of content that you scroll or that you see or that any message that you get or email or anything that pops up into your world. And as the day goes on, attention units are dropping lower and lower and lower. You want to save those attention units for what matters the most. Many times we're wasting these attention units on more information that won't even change what the outcome is. It won't even change the result, won't change what the methodology is. It's just information that you're just stacking, and it turns into this over complexity that just becomes overwhelming, and then there's no action that's taken because it's like, well, I need the clarity before I can take the action because now I have all of this information that I've gathered, but now I need to sift through and find the best information. And oh, does this work? Well, this doesn't work. Okay, well, how about this? And so it turns into this over analysis of all of this data to try to mix and match to make this perfect puzzle, when in reality, it's like a lot of this information is completely unnecessary. You have enough information. You don't need some new insight. It's like you get the 80% of the result from the top 20% of the information. And it's, like I said, this is an easy path for many people to simply procrastinate. Another example of where this shows up is a guy who is trying to compile the perfect workout split, doing his research. He's on the Reddits, he's on the YouTubes, he's doing all the things. Okay, is it push legs pull? Is it upper lower? Is it full body? Is it undulating periodization with a strength block, then hypertrophy? Or what is the... Meanwhile, he's wasted 3 freaking weeks doing nothing, stuck in his head, not taking action. Snap out of it, take action, do the thing. This is the biggest thing that I see people struggle with in this world where we have so many options, so much information. If you can remove this over-analysis and step into more of this concept of retard maxing, as the term becomes thrown around on the internet, I think the case for retard maxing really excels here. In this type of situation where over-analysis becomes the paralysis. And this concept of retard maxing, essentially the concept of shutting off your frontal lobe and just being aware of your environment, the senses, the sensations, and just taking action. The case could be made for just shutting off your brain and just taking action, just doing these things instead of waiting for the perfect time or the perfect polished thing. It's the complexity of all of this becomes the procrastination. This becomes the sabotage over time. And sometimes it's not about framework. It's about just shutting the fuck up and just sticking to the plan, taking action, doing something, breaking out of the cycle. And this brings us to concept number 3, which is standards beat feelings. Feelings fluctuate, but standards hold the line. It's the standards that you want to default to that gets you through when you're unmotivated or gets you through the hardest times. So you default to what your baseline standard is. Your future is not built by what you might feel like doing. It's built by what you do repeatedly in spite of the states. If you don't feel like going to the gym, well, okay, you may not feel like going to the gym, but is your standard that you go to the gym 5 days a week? If that's the standard, then I don't give a rat's ass about your feelings. Go to the fucking gym. If you don't feel like going for a walk, but your standard is I go for a walk after every meal that I have, well, then you better get your ass out and go for a walk, because if that's the standard doesn't care about your feelings. And there's a lot of confusion about feelings and emotions in modern day. Some guys are falling into the trap of being told to share their feelings more or be more in their feelings. And there's times to feel your feelings and there's times to say, fuck your feelings. It's my goal to help guys to understand when it's appropriate to share your feelings or to feel your feelings versus to mask or override or ignore your feelings. If you don't feel like going to the gym, but your goal and your standard is to go to the gym 5 days a week, well, I don't care how you feel. Your muscles don't care if you don't feel like going to the gym. You need to go to the gym. So setting a standard is going to help to keep you on track regardless on how you feel, if you feel motivated or if you don't feel motivated. This is just the reality, guys. Consider the example of eating. If I don't feel like eating protein or I don't feel like eating that doesn't sound good. If you have a standard of eating protein, this is the standard, this is the rule, this is the number, then just do it. Don't wait for the feeling. You let these feelings override your standard. That's going to be the biggest sabotage right there, as you let your feelings dictate what the standard is rather than letting the standard dictate what your actions are. In the case of sleep, this is one that gets sacrificed by a lot of people, is they don't have a sleep standard. And this is one of the things that gets sacrificed the soonest. If you have busy work project or emails you need to answer late, sleep is what gets sacrificed, and sleep is one of those most important things. And you want to maintain the sleep standard that, hey, I go to bed at this certain time, I wake up at this certain time, I start winding down 90 minutes or 60 minutes before bed, I turn off the lights, I turn down the temperature, I put away screens. That's my standard, and you stick to that standard. These are the things that you implement into a framework that's going to help to support your habits and your success regardless of how you feel. Removing the feelings, removing the motivation from all of this, and just creating the framework and the system that you just simply execute on. This is what makes the most successful people. Get out of your own way, stick to the plan, take the steps, and this is what makes success inevitable. It's your standards and discipline that protects the future version of yourself from your current self and how you might be feeling or sabotaging yourself currently. So sticking to your standards, sticking to discipline is what protects the future version of yourself. It's the man without standards that has to renegotiate his life every morning he wakes up that new day. So you don't want to be that man. And this brings us to concept number 4, which is your plan must survive real life. Most plans fail because they're designed for just the perfect conditions. And real life doesn't have the perfect conditions. We have stress. We have business meetings. We have social events, family issues, sickness, car accidents. Life happens, and we need to have a plan. You need to have a plan that's going to work in any of these situations so that you have your non-negotiables that set your standard when things get difficult. But the problem happens when people don't have the standard, when you don't have a plan that can be dynamic. And then you fall off track, come up with excuses, and then build up negative momentum and find yourself off the rails. In order to prevent that, you can do that by having a plan with non-negotiables that set your basement standard. Set the absolute minimum that you do on a daily basis. For example, having a what I call a bad day standard. So if you have a bad day, the question is, what are you going to do that day? The plan isn't a real good plan until that plan works when things go awry. I suggest having what I call a bad day standard. On a bad day, what still gets done? What are your non-negotiables? What's the absolute minimum that you can get done even on the worst days? That's a good plan. That's a plan that's going to keep you consistent even on the hardest of days. That's the floor. And for you, some of those examples may be a 10-minute walk, or just 20 minutes at the gym, or having one really solid protein meal, or being sure that you're going to drink 1 liter of water that day, or lights out before 1 hour before bed. It's the minimum effective dose that keeps you consistent, and it keeps that chain alive. And there are 4 non-negotiables that I adhere to and my clients will stick to. And this may be something for you to implement as well. And those 4 non-negotiables are: first, protein, being sure that you're hitting your protein goal every single day. Secondly, daily movement, getting in between 8,000 to 12,000 steps every single day. Third would be doing your strength training. And this depends on what your split looks like. If it's a day where you're programmed to train, you need to get that training session in. And then fourth, sleep. This is one of the biggest factors that gets sacrificed before everything else. People don't take it seriously. And to take this a step further in terms of seriousness, I would encourage you to set a bedtime alarm. Setting an alarm that reminds you that it's time to wind down to prepare for bed. This is going to stop you from getting caught up, whether it's evening work, whether that's in watching a late night TV show or being out with friends, whatever that may look like. Setting a non-negotiable bedtime alarm that's going to tell you when it's time to start winding down and preparing for bed. So when we talk about non-negotiables or the bad day standard, you don't wait until things go awry and chaos and then to see if your plan works. And if you consider, say, hospitals, military teams, airplanes, the list goes on, they have protocols for if things go awry. And you can use that same standard to your advantage to help make your results inevitable, is having protocols that will get you through the hardest of days. Having the non-negotiables that are non-negotiable to you. Doesn't matter what somebody else thinks, somebody else says, whatever else is going on in the world, you have your standards of what you're going to do that's non-negotiable. So having your protocol, that's going to help you survive these difficult times rather than being the whole host of people that have their excuses, they fall off track, and then it becomes trendy to be the person that has shitty goals, a bad physique, and no discipline. I don't want to be associated with that. I'm a very disciplined person. I have goals. I know where my head's at and where my focus is. And if I'm going to be the one to get there, it's me that's going to get me there. It's not depending on somebody else. And I'm not going to sacrifice my future self at the expense of today in order to please anybody else. And so sticking to those non-negotiables now, it's what your future self is going to thank you for later. And this brings us to our 5th and final concept. Execution creates identity. You do not become disciplined by thinking about discipline. You become disciplined by repeatedly keeping promises to yourself, by doing the things you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. You build up the confidence and that rapport with yourself that you're the type of man that does what he says he's going to do. If you don't, if you say you're going to do something and then you repeatedly don't do that thing, now you're breaking rapport with yourself. Now yourself doesn't trust yourself, and that perpetuates this cycle of stagnancy and not taking action. Then you become the type of man that is identified with not taking action, not being disciplined, and not executing. So it's through taking action, it's through doing these things that you build the evidence of discipline, that you build the evidence of execution. Every time that you follow through, you build this evidence. Every time you break your word to yourself, you build that evidence too. So you're constantly either building rapport with yourself or breaking rapport with yourself. Your mind is always watching. I talk about the subconscious mind a lot. This is something we're going to have future videos on. But your mind, your subconscious is always watching. It's always listening. Your thoughts, your words you use, the internal language you use, the words you use with others, the visualizations and the images that you create in your mind. This is always constantly programming your subconscious mind. So it may not be conscious that you're breaking rapport with yourself. You may not be fully aware that you told yourself you were going to go for a workout, and you then decided that you came up with an excuse that justified not going to the gym and working out. Your subconscious still recognizes those things, even if your conscious doesn't. And over time, this may manifest as a feeling of just like ick, or feeling like you aren't like something's off, or some sort of negative energy or agitation, because deep down subconsciously your mind knows that you've repeatedly broken rapport with yourself. And you want to be the type of man that has the self-respect in building the identity of who he intends to be. And this is through the words we use, this is through the images we create, and this is through our actions and our behaviors. When a man says he's going to train and he goes and he trains, he has the evidence that he followed through and that he did his training. And that builds the evidence that he is the disciplined type of person. After doing that consistently, it removes the thought, it removes the emotion of, do I need to decide or negotiate with myself on if I am or if I'm not going to go to the gym, or if I am or am not going to hit my protein goal. It's a lot easier to have a system, have a standard, and to make that non-negotiable, and to stick to that plan 100% of the time, rather than being committed to that plan 99% of the time. When you are 100% committed, there is no negotiating with yourself. There's no decision that needs to be made, because the decision has already been made. You are 100% committed to this thing, and there's no other decision to be made. That's one. It removes the need to have to spend attention units on making decisions and experiencing decision fatigue. And two, it keeps your standard strong. It removes the emotion and it keeps you on track. Guys, we may fall off track. I fell off track. Things happen. We want to get back on track as soon as possible and build up positive momentum. And to keep your word with yourself, to build rapport with yourself, even if it means that you have to, if you fall off and you feel like you're constantly restarting, it's either you're going to restart or you're just going to stop and not be on track. You cannot lie to yourself. You cannot lie to your subconscious. Your behavior, your body, your physiology is going to communicate that there is this disconnect if you are not living through to your standard and the identity of which you're striving to be. So to land the plan and summarize our 5 concepts. 1, motivation comes after the action. You do not wait for the state to change, for the perfect state to arrive. You create the state by moving first. Number 2, overthinking is self-sabotage. At some point, more analysis becomes avoidance. You don't need more information. You don't need more research or data. In fact, that becomes procrastination, and over-analysis leads to paralysis. You need to stop negotiating with yourself and start executing. Number 3, standards beat feelings. Feelings can change by the hour, like the weather, but having standards keeps you anchored in your goals and the man that you're becoming. Number 4, your plan must survive real life. If your plan only works when life is perfect, smooth sailing, it's not a real plan. You need to have a plan that can survive the bad days, even when you have the worst day, having non-negotiables that are going to keep you on track. And number 5, execution creates identity. You become disciplined by stacking proof, collecting evidence, keeping your promises, and repeatedly doing what you said you were going to do. Thank you for listening. Hit the like, comment, and subscribe. You can get a consult with me, get my free testosterone optimization course, or any of my other offers in the link in the description below.